It is 8:10 now on a finally Friday morning. Time for a close look at KLIR's community. And my guest this morning is the incredibly wide awake and perky Renee Mueller. How are you?
I'm great, Riley. How are you?
You know, I'm pepping up now, so I got to keep up with you.
I'm glad to have that impact.
So you are a realtor, so you kind of have your finger on the pulse of what's happening with housing here in the area. So what are some of the trends we're seeing as we go into the new year?
Well, last time I was here, we spoke about inventory, of course, because that's a hot topic. I mean, it's still very, very low. Mm-hmm. This last year, when we're looking at overall sales in Columbus, so being hyperlocal, it was down 15%. And that's due to a combination of the rates being what they have been and also just the supply. You know, I mean, there was more demand going into it. So we're still in that same sort of bubble that we were in before where, you know, it's sort of just wait and see what happens. That's what a lot of people's mentality is. And I think going into this next year, I mean, we're already in 23. As I say that, I'm going, well, I guess it's a new year. It's so crazy. But rates have stabilized, and I think we'll continue to see a little bit of relief there. But, you know, not to say that we are still not in challenging times. So you've got to be able to make it through that, that's for sure.
I want to talk a little bit about having a realtor when you either buy or sell, because we do have people that think, I can sell it on my own, or I can go out and find a house on my own, and that can be not only a time waster, but a money waster.
You must have read my mind. I was going to bring this up. So, yes, that's the other thing that we saw quite a bit, actually. We had, I don't know the exact number, but there were several contracts, I would say, you know, maybe 10% that just fell apart during this time where the rates started to increase and you started to see either buyers were not completely qualified, or it put them out because their debt to income ratio changed and they had looked so long, couldn't find something. You know, we had a lot of people lose out on deals. And so, you know, if you don't have an agent on one or both sides that is a strong negotiator that knows how to make it through any sort of negotiation, then, you know, we like I said, saw some of these fall apart, several of them. And so it does make a difference, and I cannot emphasize that enough. So just to have someone that can really represent you and, like I said, be that strong negotiator. So we've seen several that have just fallen apart, and most of that was due to the fact that we had an influx of agents in the market. I would say, you know, that the numbers grew by a staggering amount because the market was great. And during those times, that's when you tend to see the numbers of licensed agents, realtors increase. And so, you know, just no experience. And I laugh at some of the things that the agents in my office will come and ask questions on, you know, how do I reduce the price of this house? And what's the price reduction form? And I'm going, oh my gosh, yeah, that's right. You've only been in the market for 2 years. You haven't seen this. So it's really kind of incredible.
I think if you're trying to sell it by yourself, you're probably going to end up losing money. Is that a fair assessment?
Right. Yes. We obviously don't control the market. We as agents, it's our job to educate the clients on what the market is. And so I think that's the misconception that a lot of people have. Well, you know, you're controlling the price, you're causing those prices to go up. We're looking at what the market is and making sure that there's clients that are not leaving money on the table. And also during times like this, you know, I mean, you look at it when the market was really, really heavy and the houses were selling like crazy. It did seem easy for the sellers. We still had money that was being left on the table, or prices were not right, because when the market changes so swiftly, like it has over the last year, definitely, you know, we had a huge upswing where the prices were, you know, up 12, 15%, and we had a lot of prices that were not correct. They weren't enough. Mm-hmm. And then the same could be said when the rates started to increase and you know, we had those prices adjust just a little bit, and so the clients were not sure, just not aware of where they should be in the market, and you had buyers coming in and you know, that's where those deals fell apart. Just again, it is a lot of education. This is a full-time career. It's a full-time position for a reason, you know, mm-hmm. and especially in the times where the market changes so quick. So
okay. We're going to keep Renee here because I have some more questions for her when we come back on KLIR 101. Stay tuned. We are back with Community Spotlight. My guest is Renee Mueller from kwELITE Realty, and we're talking about all things realty related. And it's interesting, Renee, because when we think of realtors, and I have to say I've worked with some awesome realtors in my many years here in Columbus.
I didn't pay her to say that either. So.
No, she didn't. And I've actually never worked with you as far as professionally there, but there are a lot of really good ones, but it's so much more. We just think of buying and selling houses. It's so much more.
It's so much more, yeah. Like we were talking before going into the segment, this is the only transactional item I can think of where there are so many people involved, so many parts and pieces and so many people, and it's a huge amount to manage. So that's the biggest job, and that's why it is a full-time job. Mm-hmm. So, between the lender, the underwriter, the appraisers, the realtors, the sellers, the buyers, all the inspections, all of those things go into it when someone has to get a loan, of course, and so it's a big deal.
Should you get your financial advisor first or your realtor first?
Financial advisor, you mean lender?
Yeah.
So I would always recommend that, yes, because if not, chances are you're going to go look at properties that you're not qualified for, or maybe, we had a lot in this last market, and of course this has changed now, but when the market was at its highest at the beginning of this last year, we had a high number of people losing out on homes because there was no inventory. There's still no inventory, but people were losing out because they just were not aware of what they could purchase or the purchasing power. And those sellers, if they were not paying cash, you were lucky to get a bid accepted if you had a loan, to be honest with you. That's just how crazy it was. But if there was a loan in place, then the seller was at least more likely to see, hey, they're qualified, they're ready to go and accept that offer. And that was the challenge back then. Right. And we still see that because now sellers are kind of questioning, well, the debt to incomes have changed, ratios have changed, and so is this person qualified? And that changed drastically and very, very quickly. And so it is important, I would say, to start there first.
What's interesting too, I guess, is you speak about debt to, what was it you called it? The debt
DTI, debt to income ratio. Yeah.
That. So actually how wages look in an area will affect your buying power.
Oh boy, yeah. Well, of course, there was a lot that changed with this last vote, right? And
right.
So with minimum wage, and that's what happens, and that all plays into inflation. And so with prices going up and affordability changing, so that decreasing, debt to incomes changed a lot. You saw a lot more people renting. Many more renting because of that. But yeah, that formula is very important. And so what was the question?
Right? No, I just think it was interesting because what you make in wages is big on as far as...
Yeah, of course. So it plays a big part of it. Yeah, and that's where you start to see many of the employers, having to change what they're doing. Either they're raising those wages or they're looking at, should we hire remote? Do we, there's been several layoffs, as that's all over the news if you watch it. And so, here hyper locally, we haven't had that issue. We're experiencing more growth than anything. However, I do, have to say with my own experience, it is very difficult. Everyone's still sort of fighting over the same talent that's out there. And as a small business owner, especially, it's really difficult to, sort of make that balancing act all work because, you want to try to compete with these larger employers. But in times like this, it is a little more difficult. So you kind of wonder, where should we go and where's the labor force looking at and what sort of tech or new processes can we put in place that will help sort of, I don't want to say eliminate by any means, but cut down maybe on some of the human capital and help work more efficiently so that, maybe that plays into that. And so without going down a rabbit hole with all of that, we're talking about housing,
it's so easy to do,
it does, yeah, it does all play a part. So
just personal curiosity, what is the education that you go through to become a licensed realtor?
Well, that bar should be raised. No, it's not huge, unfortunately. It's really not. And that, I would say, is probably the unfortunate part. I mean, Crystal can probably attest to this. So, I send out links to would-be agents on a regular basis. And, here's 2 classes you take. You go sit for the exam. The process could be 6 weeks. It could be 6 months. Just depends on the person. So that's why it's really important to look at, as a broker and as an agent, what quality of agents are coming into the market, how are you training them, how are you educating them. We have a pretty rigorous onboarding process, so there's 90 days of additional training to go into it when we have agents that want to come to our office, and that involves shadowing and training and courses additional to what they would be taking as those basic courses to get a license, because the bar really is set fairly low, to be honest with you. And so those are all important questions to ask the agent as well. There's certain designations they can get on top of that, and many at our office have those. I think Crystal's GRI, right? Mm-hmm. And so that to me is very, very important because it is all about education. And unfortunately, you learn the hard way sometimes by either, you're paying for something in a transaction as an agent, or, we had a high number of, I think I told you, claims and lawsuits this last year with regard to just how quickly the market was moving, and buyers having remorse or sellers having remorse, or, things happening, the inspections and, things were just crazy. And so it's really, really important to look at the quality of the agent that you're working with and their education. So
very true. Okay, I warned Renee that I was going to ask her a really weird question. I am just personally a person who's fascinated by true crime. I listen to podcasts all the time. Mm-hmm. So in Nebraska, do you have to put out something that says, yes, there was a crime committed in this house and blah, blah, blah? Is that required?
That is a great question. Yes, some states do. So we have in Nebraska, there are requirements, and you do have to have what's called a seller's disclosure at the time that you list a property and sell it for sure. So the seller signs it, and it states everything they know to be true about the property. It's not a warranty of any kind. The buyer also will sign it then. And so in Nebraska, those are 4 pages, 3.5. States like California are about 20 pages. So you do have to disclose there if, there's been a ghost in the house or a celebrity lived there. Right, exactly. I mean, this is true. So Nebraska is pretty basic. You do not have to disclose if there was a crime, murder, suicide, anything like that. However, on a personal note, just because the community is small enough still, I would always want to do that. And if I knew of that, an instance like that, and I have had houses listed that have had those instances here in Columbus. So I would always want to disclose that, but it's not something that is required. So.
Oh, wow. Well, I am a freak, and everybody knows it.
I love it. I'm a 2020 freak. All that stuff, Dateline, it's pretty interesting. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Renee Mueller, always great to have you, and we just get such great education. That's it.
Thanks, right.
We got to save something for next month.
All right. Awesome.
All right. Stay tuned. More music coming up on KLIR 101.